This video assumes that you've played through Kingdom Hearts 3, and as such may spoil any number of things for those who haven't yet played it. You have been warned. Kingdom Hearts as a series is special to me, not in an emotional, wow, I just love this series like no other kind of way, but it marks a lot of firsts for me. Kingdom Hearts 1 was not only the first ever PlayStation 2 game that I played. Not only was it the first time I'd ever played a game where I was forced to use the analog sticks, it was also the first time I remember intentionally playing on the hardest difficulty, and the first game where I genuinely spent real time doing self-imposed challenges. It was my first action hack-and-slash style game. Kingdom Hearts 2 was the first game I'd ever pre-ordered, and the first game I picked up day one. I've since played through Kingdom Hearts 1 probably more than a dozen times. I've done the same with Kingdom Hearts 2, and in the last 3 years, I've platinumed the game twice on critical mode. I've done a level 1 critical run, and I'm currently doing another run that you'll see sometime hopefully very soon. I've gotten the platinum on Kingdom Hearts 1, gotten every trophy on 0.2, beat Chain of Memories on the GBA with Riku and Sora, as well as beat Rechain with Riku and Sora around 4 times each, including on Proud Mode twice. I've gotten nearly every trophy on the travesty that is Birth by Sleep twice, etc. I even watched my best friend play through the whole series leading up to the release of KH3 through PS4 SharePlay. And now I have played through Kingdom Hearts 3 twice, first on Standard where I got the Platinum Trophy, and then on Proud where I intentionally stayed underleveled. I make this clear not to boast, but to highlight that I am not some casual pleb who hardly plays the series. I would not call myself a hardcore fan, because there's a lot about the series I don't enjoy, but I'm not unversed when it comes to the series. Because of this, it's sad that I have to more or less come to the conclusion that Kingdom Hearts 3 is only okay at best. Before we move on, I want to make one thing clear. As I said, I think this game is okay. I don't think it's awful. I don't think it has no redeeming qualities. I think it's okay. The things it struggles with frustrate me because I know they can do so much better, and some of the decisions made are baffling at best. But that does not translate to me hating the game and thinking it's garbage. I also want to talk about certain things here, not everything. Some things others have already covered, so not only do I not want to be redundant, but I also don't want to come across as if I'm just aping their ideas and criticisms. Other things just didn't impact my playthrough much, or I didn't feel was worth saying much about. So if I don't mention something, that doesn't mean I think it's poorly done. It may be overpowered, but I do like the magic system, for example. I like that you can combo magic in the air now. I like that you can move while using magic too. I also think it's great that they picked up where KH2 left off in terms of leveling, since it means you get most of your core combat options as you progress, no matter your level. They also finally brought back KH2's Keyblade balancing so that all Keyblades have genuine use from beginning of the game to end, rather than just throwing a linear progression of beating rods at us with increasing stats like every other Osaka team title. I have problems with stuff like links, but they're no worse than Kingdom Hearts 1 summons, if I'm being honest. Though, Kingdom Hearts 2 Stitch versus Kingdom Hearts 3 Stitch is arguably the biggest nerf in gaming history. But the point is, if I don't mention something, all that means is that I didn't feel it was worth extending this video for just to talk about. So don't freak out and start ranting about how I'm ignoring good aspects to the game's design. I'm talking about the things that impacted my experience the most, because that's what mattered to me the most. Don't take that any other way. Anyway, unfortunately, Osaka Team couldn't break themselves of their bad habits. Even with so much more development time, better tech, better hardware, and a much larger budget. They have improved in some ways over the years, but it's simply not enough, and it's only made worse by Nomura's insane storytelling. That's something I won't be spending much time on, because I personally couldn't care less about the story. If you like Kingdom Hearts characters and story like they're your own flesh and blood, I'm genuinely happy for you, but I don't. In short, I agree with a lot of the criticisms already leveled at the game by other people. The pacing of KH3's story is horribly inconsistent, the dialogue is often stilted, some of the voice acting sounds either extremely phoned in or like they were given terrible direction, many scenes are nothing but frustrating exposition dumps with characters standing around, half of the Disney worlds are so abridged that you can barely understand what's going on, and I would know because I haven't watched most of those movies, and seemingly important plot points in these worlds constantly disappear into the ether. The social media style loading screens are incredibly cringy, and don't even make sense if you assume they're not a break in the fourth wall and are instead happening in-world. Like, let me ask, who's making the art for their profile pictures? Who, when they're readying themselves for this war, is sitting down and drawing chibi versions of every single one of their friends for this social media thing that like 12 people are using? Anyway, the last leg of the plot is full of repetition, pointless emotional thrills for the sake of giving a high to hardcore fans. They do absolutely nothing with Kairi to the point of insulting her character and anyone who thought she could actually be something for the last decade and a half. The whole last section is filled with Deus Ex Machina moments and half-baked about faces from characters that feel like they were purely put in there so that the characters could continue to be used in future titles. Nothing that finished in this game had adequate build-up in this game. In short, the way this game is told is not good. The more I think about it, the more messy it seems than even games like Dream Drop Distance in execution. However, before we jump over the story and straight into gameplay, I wanted to bring up just a few things I haven't seen anyone else really mention. Firstly, there are a few lip sync issues throughout the game, like in this early cutscene with Yen Sid.
I would have it no other way. I put Sora in your hands.
And don't forget!
Or in this Toy Story scene where Buzz says,
Ham needs us.
It's not a super common problem, but still, I don't think it's really acceptable at this point either, at least not for the primary cutscenes in the game. Secondly, the characters are often really one note in Kingdom Hearts 3, even more so than usual. Probably over half of the interactions between Sora, Donald, and Goofy consist of Sora being the lovable idiot, Donald being a jackass about something, and Goofy rounding it out by being honest to a fault, but strangely accurate at the same time. While these moments on their own are actually probably the best written bits in the game, it gets so repetitive that it can feel formulaic and stifling. Other characters aren't immune to this either. Rapunzel is nothing but a giant mood swing the entire time until the very end. Flynn is the quick-talking jokester the entire time. Sully does nothing but act fatherly toward Boo. Mike is just the comic relief. Buzz is a mistrusting party pooper, and Woody is the overly trusting goody two-shoes. A lot of this is frankly very inaccurate to the actual characters they're representing, again from the movies I've seen, because these characters are much more nuanced than this in their respective movies. Granted, I don't actually have much attachment to most of these characters myself. I'm not torn up that they're shells of their former selves, but it doesn't mean it's okay that they're rarely interesting as characters and even more rarely fun to watch. Tangled worked, but that's because so much of it was ripped near verbatim from the movie. I didn't know that until I looked up a comparison between the scenes, and yeah, Nomura and Osaka team didn't write any of these jokes, or pace any of this stuff themselves. Meanwhile, as I said earlier, they completely destroyed any chance for Kairi to become a decent character, since she was built up ultimately to die in the end without accomplishing anything. Super lame and an insult to what little character she had. Not to mention, it's ludicrous that the game tries to play the Xehanort redemption card at the end, no more than 30 minutes after he freaking killed Kairi. Like, what kind of utter nonsense storytelling is that? Sora should want to stab a bitch, not realize that he was good all along or some garbage. Fourth, The chess game metaphor used throughout the game is fine, up until near the end, where Xehanort claims checkmate. So, here's the problem. In normal chess, check is the name of a situation where your opponent can defeat your king on their next turn. If your king ends up in check, you have to use your next turn to get the king out of danger. A checkmate is basically a check, but there's no way for the king to escape, meaning the game is over. There is no way out of a checkmate. That is why it's called a checkmate. With that in mind, the fact that Ericus escapes the checkmate means one of three things. If we assume the game doesn't work like real-world chess, and checkmate isn't the end of the game, the metaphor falls apart. As a term, checkmate means nothing to us if the game isn't played the same and checkmate doesn't mean the same. If we assume the game they're playing does work like real chess, where checkmate is the end, there are only two conclusions from there. Either Ericus just cheated, meaning he's an idiot and an asshole, what else is new? Or Xehanort called a checkmate without knowing for sure that it indeed was the end of the game, meaning he's an idiot. Either way, one of these two characters, who are supposed to be highlighted as masterminds for their respective set of ideals, looks like a buffoon. This doesn't exactly help make Xehanort seem more threatening if he's so dumb, and it completely misrepresents the side of light as a bunch of cheating jerks if we assume Ericus cheated. Because this is supposed to be metaphor, you also can't explain it away with some contrived, well, they're kids, so maybe they're not very good at chess excuse, because all that would mean is that it doesn't work as a metaphor. In reality, any way you look at it, this metaphor doesn't work, simply because it doesn't actually understand or follow the rules of chess, the thing it's trying to be an analog for. These sorts of obvious mistakes are hilarious to me, because it's a good indicator that the writers are struggling to find proper ways to represent the situations their characters find themselves in. How this happened is beyond me, considering it takes 2 minutes to Google what checkmate means in chess so you can figure out how to represent it in your scene. This is the sort of half-baked writing seen through the entire game. Beyond that, I haven't seen many people come down on the epilogue for being the disgusting anti-consumer move it really is. In the epilogue, we find out that Xigbar is actually Lushu from the time before the world was split. This isn't the problem, and it's an understandable way to get fans excited to see what the future of the series has in store. I don't mind it at all. The problem is actually the box. This box is a mystery. Nobody knows what's in it, but it's supposed to be important and potentially really powerful. This box is introduced in previous media within the series. The box is also brought up all the way through Kingdom Hearts 3, and in fact is the sole reason Maleficent and Pete are even here. There are several fully fledged scenes that are just about Pete and Maleficent looking for the box. There are scenes where the main group of villains bring up the box. There are scenes where Sora and the heroes reference the box. This thing is built up to be something we should expect to be revealed in this game. This box was referenced in the advertising for this game, implying that if you buy Kingdom Hearts 3, you will get to see what is inside the box. It is posed as a mystery in Kingdom Hearts 3, a reason why you should buy Kingdom Hearts 3. This advertising posits that the box will be a pretty important part of the story. Heck, for me personally, the box was the only interesting mystery left. We knew Xehanort would summon the Keyblade. We knew he would call upon Kingdom Hearts. We knew Terra, Xion, Ventus, Roxas, Aqua, etc. would come back. If we're honest, we knew how 99% of this game was going to happen. The only major mystery they had built up was the box, and then it ended up being nothing but sequel bait for future titles. You don't have to be personally upset by that, mind you. But there's really no denying that it's extremely anti-consumer to show and build up this mystery in the advertising for the game, only to basically have it be next time on Dragon Ball Z. You are misrepresenting your product with the goal of getting more people to purchase it, with no intention of keeping your end of the bargain. Don't agree? Let's use a similar example to compare. Do you think it's okay that many movies these days have scenes that are specifically directed for the trailer that aren't actually in the movie? Do you think it's okay that movie trailers often misrepresent the movie by creating, say, action movie trailers as an example, when the movie is actually an introspective horror film with few action scenes? Does this sort of not feel like deceptive and anti-consumer marketing? Doesn't it feel like you're being lied to? If so, then you should think the same thing about this, because that's exactly what it is. At the beginning of the game, we know there's a mysterious box that Maleficent is looking for. At the end, after probably 15 or 20 minutes of cutscenes are focused on this box, we know nothing more about the box, despite it being featured in advertisements as part of this game's story. That's unacceptable. Before we move on, I do have one positive thing to note about the way this game was written. Since every major character is given a Gummy phone to keep in contact, this game feels a lot less isolated than the others. It genuinely gives the impression of a group effort, and even does a better job than other games at making it feel like everyone is actually preparing for war, rather than just the handful of people in your party. It's genuinely uplifting to see that through most of the game, it feels like all of the power these characters have is actually being put to good use. Until you get to the Keyblade graveyard anyway. I would also like to mention that the game is beautiful. If you're on a PS4 Pro at 1080p, it runs well in the default mode. The music is great, and it does pretty okay in terms of flashiness. The opening cutscene in particular is great. And I love the CG for things like pirates. It's kind of cool to see those characters in CG trying to look realistic. Okay, so with that out of the way, it's time to discuss the actual game. To start, let's talk about the basic game feel. It's sluggish and awkward. Don't get me wrong, it's a big improvement over games like Birth by Sleep, and feels smoother than something like Dream Drop Distance, even if it's actually more clunky in design. Sora takes a lot from Aqua in 0.2, as expected, though he is a tad faster and more weighty in general in combat. However, his base options simply don't hold a candle to Kingdom Hearts 2, and some of his options feel even less useful than those Aqua had in 0.2. Now, before you freak out, because I know there's going to be someone who thinks this, I am not comparing this game to Kingdom Hearts 2 because I think it needs to be like Kingdom Hearts 2. I am comparing it to Kingdom Hearts 2 because Kingdom Hearts 2 handles combat and balance the best in the series. Therefore, it's important to understand when this game doesn't create new mechanics that work just as well as those in Kingdom Hearts 2. It could have a completely different set of mechanics, and I would not care. I would be happy if those mechanics were balanced to work correctly. So this isn't some Kingdom Hearts 2 propaganda complaining that the game should have just recycled all of its mechanics. Understood? Good. For whatever reason, Sora never gets access to the barrier block that Aqua uses, something that Riku uses as well when you're playing as him. I don't really understand this change, since it more or less means that the air block they added in 0.2 and Kingdom Hearts 3 really doesn't have much utility in Kingdom Hearts 3 if you're not fighting a humanoid boss one-on-one. It's too easy to get poked in the back because Sora's block only seems to protect his back if he first blocks an attack from the front, similar to Kingdom Hearts 2. This would be okay, but enemies in Kingdom Hearts 3 love to either come flying at you or shoot projectiles at you from off-screen, which can no longer be reacted to with a block like in 0.2 unless you're also getting hit from the front at the same time. This isn't a big deal, but it feels underpowered in mob fights and doesn't allow the player to control the battlefield as much as I think we should be allowed to, as much as we could in 0.2. That was one of the core pillars that I think made that game fun, was being able to cancel immediately into an all-encompassing block when you needed to. In fact, we have very few moves in general that allow for crowd control here. We have plenty of AoE attacks, but nothing like Magnet, Stop, or Zero Gravity that isn't either a finisher or a situation command that comes up semi-randomly. The Air Block and Air Dash also only tend to cancel normal combo attacks, not finishers. Aqua, by comparison, can cancel her normal combo attacks and her first finisher into either the Air Block or Air Dash. A lot of other little changes really contribute to that sluggish and awkward feel when you start to break it down bit by bit. There's a ton of wasted time in a lot of the attacks you have access to in combos and forms. Heck, Speed Slash is so dangerous that I took it off because it's a sloppy, inaccurate, and incredibly slow attack that offers little protection while using it. And if we're being super technical, the best option might honestly just be to use none of the alternate finishers. All of the optional finishers, namely Speed Slash, Magic Flash, and Triple Rush, replace your normal attacks, to the point where if you have all three equipped, you'll only do 3 normal hits, and then you'll transition into doing 3 consecutive finishers. They got rid of finish pluses here. Instead, finishers eat your combo pluses. What this means is that you're left wide open during attacks like Triple Rush and Speed Slash because they're somewhat clumsily designed for mob fights and you can't cancel them with blocks. Likewise, if you have none of them equipped, you still have your normal finisher as your 6th attack, which is okay. But every other attack is just a normal slash, meaning you can cancel them all with blocks or air slide. You go from being able to cancel your first 3 hits into a block to being able to cancel your first 5 hits from a block, and with a shorter, safer finisher. Usually the enemies are so dumb that it's not an issue. In fact, I've beat the game twice, as I said, and there are still quite a few enemies that I don't exactly understand the purpose of. I don't know what they do other than stand around waiting to be defeated, or offer me situation commands and attraction flows. But when they're not pushovers, you can often be left open way too long because these finishers prefer to be flashy rather than useful a lot of the time, particularly Speed Slash. A rather good way to see this in action is against the Lich near the end of the game. Each time you defeat him, he'll start breaking out of combos quicker, leaving behind an afterimage that will explode and damage you. Many of your combat options in this game take so long that simply entering a finisher or using attacks from a Keyblade transformation has a good chance of guaranteeing you'll get hit in the last handful of fights. I'm not opposed to getting people to equip or unequip options to better refine their options for specific tasks at hand. Kingdom Hearts 2 does this. The problem is more so that about 50% of the game is so dumbed down here that you never need to worry about what you have equipped, and the other 50% of the game literally punishes using a good 85% of your arsenal, meaning the best option is to just unequip most of your combat abilities. That is, except for Payback Strike, this game's version of Retaliating Slash. They were kind of smart with Payback Strike here. One of the biggest problems for less skilled players when they tried Kingdom Hearts 2 on any challenging difficulty or boss was that they tended to use Retaliating Slash so often once they got it that it became muscle memory. Retaliating Slash is an Okemi move that resets Sora after he's taken damage in the air. It allows him to get back into the action faster, just like Aerial Recovery. The difference between the two is that Aerial Recovery just recovers you, where Retaliating Slash attacks the enemy afterward. Using Retaliating Slash simply required pressing square after being damaged in the air, so it was easy to accidentally do. This is a problem since using Aerial Recovery and Retaliating Slash cancels your Once More ability. You cannot be killed in Kingdom Hearts 2 by a combo until Sora recovers, as long as you have Once More equipped. Since Aerial Recovery and Retaliating Slash cause Sora to recover, if you're still being attacked, you'll die immediately. Choosing when to recover is an important strategic part of how Kingdom Hearts 2's more complex fights work. Payback Strike is a little different. Now it's in addition to Aerial Recovery. To use it, you first have to press circle to perform Aerial Recovery, and then press X to retaliate with Payback Strike. Just adding that one extra press of a separate button can cut down on accidental recovery deaths by a large amount. That's cool. The problem? Well, there are two. One that's more minor and a major one. The minor problem is that you cannot go straight into a normal combo from aerial recovery if you have Payback Strike equipped. Your next attack will default to Payback Strike every time, since it's mapped to X, your normal attack button. The more major issue though is that Payback Strike is insanely overpowered. Kingdom Hearts 3 focuses a lot more on aerial combat. One of the ways it does so is by giving Sora a massive magnetic range on his combos. You can start a combo quite a ways away from an enemy and it'll suction Sora toward the enemy. Payback Strike does this too, and it also gives you a boatload of invincibility frames. So, what you end up with is a near-perfect optimal strategy for safety versus ease of use, by simply comboing bosses until they retaliate, take a bit of damage they dish out, and then use Payback Strike to get back at them. Payback Strike has a huge chance of staggering the enemy again, meaning you can just repeat the process endlessly until you need to heal. It turns entire bosses into mash X until they break out and hit you, immediately recover and retaliate, then repeat. The problems don't stop there either. The camera loves to wig out on several bosses to the point that Sora completely disappears off screen, and some bosses like Anti-Aqua or Zigbar can end up outside of the battlefield during certain attacks, which just feels cheap and poorly designed. Your movement options are also genuinely just inferior to those in Kingdom Hearts 2, not just in terms of utility, but also the subtleties of their design. Double flight gives you more height than aerial recovery, for example, which can be useful, but unlike aerial dodge, it cannot give you horizontal spacing. It doesn't give you a boost in horizontal speed, and it doesn't reflect projectiles or give you parry frames. Air slide is okay, though it still has the huge recovery lag like in 0.2, not quite as bad but pretty close, and you can't use air slide on the ground, meaning your only movement option on the ground is dodge roll. Dodge roll is quicker to do in succession than in Kingdom Hearts 2, which is nice, and Sora speeds up his run if you keep moving in the same direction for a second or two, but you don't have much else as a ground option. Flow motion is rarely of benefit here, and air step is cool, but a bit overpowered as a movement option, and it only works on enemies or designated spots around the world. But the worst nerf to movement abilities is that they don't cancel into each other very well. If you have high jump on in KH3, you have two options, a high jump or an ever so slightly higher full version of the high jump. You cannot get significantly lower jumps by letting go of the button quicker. This, combined with the floaty nature of Sora in the air, means that it's really difficult to reposition while staying low enough to go directly into ground combos. Air step and glide, meanwhile, don't cancel into the previous movement ability used until the ability is practically finished. In Kingdom Hearts 2, I can double tap circle rapidly to go from a short hop into an aerial dodge to gain huge horizontal speed, and then quickly hold square to carry that straight into a glide, just as an example. In Kingdom Hearts 3, high jump has to more or less completely finish before I can use air step or glide, and air step has to finish completely as well before you can use glide from it. Glide also can no longer sit stationary in the air. Flow motion has the same issue too, since most of your flow motion options have huge recovery times just like your normal movement abilities, where you just can't do anything from them, except attack. All of this means that your movement options are next to useless in combat for everything other than their most basic functions of gaining height, or in Glide's case, transitioning to horizontal movement. They even hardly work for exploration in some levels. Just try getting through Monstropolis quickly after you've gotten all of your movement options, and realize just how much time you're wasting trying to get good glide height, but not so much that you hit the walls above the doorways at every other corner. Though at least Glide is now much better at ground hovering over slopes. You can pretty much glide across any normally traversable surface, whereas upward slopes always canceled Glide in Kingdom Hearts 2. To make things even worse, they removed most combo modifiers in Kingdom Hearts 3, and broke those that remain. Since you can now block in the air, they needed to keep the square button open during combos. In Kingdom Hearts 2, pressing square during combos would use one of your various combo modifiers, which ranged from getting a quick finisher in to defeat an enemy, a slightly more damaging or far-reaching attack to extend combos in a particular way, or even a move that knocks an enemy into the air so that you can reset your combo into an air combo. It was a pretty versatile system. Again, Kingdom Hearts 3 wants to allow you to block during combos, so instead it swaps your two lonely combo modifiers to the circle button. Anyone who's played the game already sees the problem. Circle is your button for movement abilities, so now, if you want to do double flight out of danger during a combo or whatever, you can't as long as you have your combo modifiers equipped. Instead, pressing circle in a combo will either do Rising Spiral or Groundbreaker, your two combo modifiers. Rising Spiral is just a slower, more flashy, less safe and useful version of finishing leap or upper slash, knocking your enemy into the air for an air combo. And Groundbreaker is the opposite, smashing the enemy down to the ground, which I legit don't think actually has a meaningful use at all, since Sora is so floaty and the game wants you to stay in the air so badly. To make things just a tad bit worse, the animation stutter when changing directions that was present with Aqua in 0.2 is here as well. Sora in previous titles could rotate in circles fairly smoothly. In this, he can't. Doesn't seem like a big deal, and in reality it doesn't come up that often, but still, this stutter makes precision changes in directions slow and imprecise, and can actually cause you to get hit through no fault of your own. The thing is, it's not like you can't string together impressive looking chains of actions like this one here, where I start a combo, convert it into the combo modifiers, before heading back into the combo for a handful of finishers, hit the wall to enter flow motion, fling myself across the area, and then slam down for massive theoretical AoE damage. Problem is, it's theoretical, since anything this engaging or complex rarely, if ever, comes up in combat. And honestly, it wouldn't matter if it did come up regularly, because Kingdom Hearts 3 is insultingly easy. Now, the series is known as a button masher for a reason. As people like Biz, BB, and Dax have pointed out before me, the games are rather terrible at actually teaching their mechanics, and the easier difficulties do nothing to offer incentives to be more strategic. Critical mode on Kingdom Hearts 2 is really the only one that works exceptionally well, with Proud on Kingdom Hearts 1 doing pretty okay all things considered. But even then, they don't teach you why any of your options have value. However, when done correctly, Kingdom Hearts can be genuinely deep, and insanely polished when it comes to combat and encounter design. Kingdom Hearts 3 doesn't even get close, though it's still probably the best Osaka team has accomplished up to this point. Their problem though is that they emphasize spectacle over balance and depth. For this review I played the game on standard first. I wanted to see what the game could offer on the difficulty it intends to be played by most people, and I wanted to see it with fresh eyes, rather than playing standard on my second playthrough where I already know what's coming up. I then went to Proud mode after getting the Platinum and rushed through the game quickly. That way I stayed as underleveled as possible without using the no experience ability. On standard, I didn't die a single time until I got to the only secret boss in the game. A boss that's okay, but doesn't really hold a candle to those in 2FM on his own. On Proud, I was regularly around 8 to 10 levels below what was recommended. I died more often, but only about 11 or so times total. And the only boss that really gave me trouble was the final battle with Xehanort, when he's all bald and beautiful. A good battle, but again, not a great one, particularly because the desperation move he uses at the end, where he shoots lasers and sends anti-Xehanorts after you, feels kind of cheap. Though I may just not know how to deal with it yet. The battles in the Keyblade graveyard could have been cool mechanically, but instead were mostly just a joke. If your opponents are competent-ish, generally your allies are overpowered. Hell, during the fight with Saïx, I don't even think Roxas can take damage, and he dishes out like a bar and a half of damage regularly. So it doesn't even matter that Saïx barely has any legit openings here, because you can genuinely just glide around the arena if you wanted to, and let Roxas do everything for you. Why? Yes, at the end of Kingdom Hearts 2, Riku is invincible and gives you potions every 5 seconds, but he also basically only does chip damage, meaning you have to do the battle yourself. Most of the rest of the battles here were either too chaotic to really make much sense mechanically, but were still too easy, or were against shadows of the previous versions of these bosses in terms of attack patterns. Not to mention, the game constantly breaks the battles up with cutscenes, which annihilates the pacing of the battles themselves. The battle with young Xehanort, Xemnas, and Ansem isn't much better, but at least they're a bit more well-rounded individually. Then you get to Armored Xehanort, which is just a bunch of frustrating gimmicks. Again, it's never that difficult, but the fact that the battle is never just a genuine one-on-one, standard battle means that it drags pretty hard. First, it's a bunch of armor dudes all attacking you in unison. Then it's just Armored Xehanort for a bit, but then he decides to enclose the arena and starts flying around everywhere. Then you're underwater where your moveset is cut down drastically. Then it's back outside, but you're by yourself. But even then, you're always flying during this part, and he likes to stand in a giant fire pillar half the time, meaning you can't really do much to him. The point is, most of the time when you're in danger in this fight, it's because your moveset is altered in some way, or you're ill-equipped to deal with whatever gimmick he has in store. Bosses before this are never outright bad, but get this, the only Disney boss with a humanoid design and moveset is Davy Jones, in the second-to-last world. Everything else is a massive monster that focuses on vague hitboxes, mashing X, and avoiding gimmicks. Again, they're rarely bad, but they're also rarely mechanically engaging. The fight with Vanitas when you're Aqua is thankfully not a genuinely bad fight like he was in every incarnation in Birth by Sleep. But Aqua is super overpowered, so it's not a challenge, and the fight with Anti-Aqua is just the fight with Phantom Aqua from 0.2, but far less complex, and with an annoyingly arbitrary arena where she can send her clones outside of the playable space for some reason if you're too close to the edge. Phantom Aqua was a great boss, and we got nothing to that caliber here. Speaking of annoyingly arbitrary arenas, this game's attempt at the Battle of 1,000 Heartless from Kingdom Hearts 2 is super inferior. In Kingdom Hearts 2, the arena for this battle is surrounded by walls, so it's made super clear where you can go and where you can't. Kingdom Hearts 3's version just has invisible walls, despite them being horribly denoted. Meanwhile, basically every Heartless animates at like 12 frames a second, whereas the ones that were truly loaded in Kingdom Hearts 2 ran at full speed. Well, okay, that's not entirely true, because the truly loaded Heartless in Kingdom Hearts 3 do run at full speed, because most of the Heartless you can kill aren't real. The arena this time around is filled with shadows that don't actually exist. They're just basically cardboard cutouts that go flying when you hit them. The only enemies that count toward the meter are the Heartless and Nobodies of other types that spawn in, and there are never really more than maybe 8 spawned in at a time, meaning this is more or less just a normal battle with a bunch of extra junk filling the screen. And heck, half the time you can more or less empty the arena and it can take quite a while to fill back up. So even if we argued that it succeeded at the spectacle because there are so many extra fake Heartless around, it still fails at the spectacle because they disappear and it's really hard to get a lot of them to come back to fill the arena again. Like, what is this? The 1,000 Heartless battle in Kingdom Hearts 2 may have pretended to be more grand than it was, but it was also seamless and true to what it was pretending to be. You actually had to kill 1,000 Heartless, and you could do that through any means you wanted. The reaction commands offered to you, basic combos, magic, whatever. In Kingdom Hearts 3, only around 50 enemies need to be defeated to deplete the bar, and you have to finish the battle using the finish command of the roller coaster attraction flow. On my first time, I used that command too early because I just thought it was a thing I could do, not the way to end the battle, and then I was stuck killing enemies needlessly for a few minutes until the attraction came back up, with the bar depleted most of the time. Have to use that finish command. Nothing about this works as well as it should, and there wasn't a moment past the first 10 seconds where my immersion wasn't being broken by something new. Why pay homage to one of the most well-loved moments in the series if you're not going to even do anything but the Michael Bay-style explosions better than the original? Speaking of explosions, the attraction flow system is just as repetitive as I thought it would be. More so, actually, because I gave the game the benefit of the doubt before it released, and assumed that it would include more than the 5 or so normal attractions that were shown in the trailers. Nope. They show up constantly, most of them aren't mechanically interesting whatsoever, they break the flow of combat, and they're overpowered because you can use them to go through MP charge if you're in a dangerous situation. After a while I started entering all of them other than Blaster Blaze, the only one that actually affords the player real strategic control, and then immediately dropping to the finisher. This still leaves them overpowered, mind you, since even though you can't use them to charge your MP that way, they're all AoE explosion finishers that do huge amounts of damage. It's funny, because people try to actually compare attraction flows favorably to reaction commands from Kingdom Hearts 2, but there's really no comparison. Reaction commands were less overpowered, no more easy to exploit, significantly more diverse, awarded reaction time and understanding of AI patterns a lot of the time, and offered a much greater variety of outcomes. They were also, in my opinion, much greater spectacle for these reasons. Sure, you had ones like Pegasus Run, which were flashy, mostly automatic options similar to attraction flows. But you also had ones like Reversal, which were just a cool little visual flourish that also briefly confused your enemy. You could do something cool like knock Cerberus out with Dog Paddle, or you could do a quick little leap over to Soldier Heartless with Cyclone. You could do something as epic as reflect thousands of lasers, or run up the side of a building to clash with Xemnas, or as small as swinging a bat around the arena to chip damage all of the enemies around you. There are 5 attraction flows, which come up sometimes multiple times a battle, take up tons of time, and more or less all have the same mechanical outcome: AoE damage. There are dozens of battle reaction commands in Kingdom Hearts 2, and they can be used for everything from blocking or avoiding damage, to damaging a single enemy, to damaging a bunch of enemies, to reflecting projectiles, to gaining a more favorable position, to confusing your enemy, to seeing a cool little cutscene that makes the battle more flashy. There's just no contest, which isn't a good look for Kingdom Hearts 3 since it focused so much on being flashy, and yet Kingdom Hearts 2 actually ends up being more flashy in many ways, without gutting the balance of the combat in the process. In fact, I was super glad once I'd finished the game my first time, because it meant I could turn off a large chunk of the camera flourishes and animations that come with attraction flows and Keyblade transformations and stuff in the options menu. There are a ton of these things, and they get in the way of attempts to play strategically too, not just waste your time. The amount of camera angles that these flourishes end on, only to then snap immediately back behind Sora and reset your controls, is staggering and frustrating when you just want to get back to playing the game you bought. I am glad that you can turn a good chunk of them off though. I was afraid they wouldn't allow you to do this. Situation commands, meanwhile, are too random to be super reliable in normal fights, since the difference between tagging 2 enemies with Thunder and tagging 3 enemies can dictate whether the Thunder Grand Magic situation command shows up or not, and that's not really in your control. Keyblade transformations are a great idea, and I like that you can hold on to them by switching to one of your 2 other Keyblades. I also like the fact that you can have and switch between more than one Keyblade in a battle. But the actual transformations, as stated before, are usually unwieldy, slow, and/or more dangerous than powerful. The combat here is just a mess mixed with missed opportunity. All of this translates to a game that just doesn't feel very great to play once you start to push it. It's totally fine if you turn your brain off and just look at all the pretty colors, and that is something worth praising. But the game also clearly wanted to be a competent hack-and-slash action RPG, and it's just not. The enemies don't support your ability options by providing legitimate and varied challenges, and your abilities range from actively detrimental to your success to so overpowered that there's no reason to use anything else. It's not as bad as Birth by Sleep in this regard, but I'd honestly say, well, it has more potential than Dream Drop Distance, it's more broken than Dream Drop Distance. Balloon and specific spamming of your flow motion attacks were the only things that were really that overpowered in DDD. Kingdom Hearts 3 is full of stuff that's as broken as that. This all culminates in worlds that feel tiring to explore after a while. I wouldn't say any of the worlds are bad in terms of how they complement the gameplay. Some of them, like Arendelle, Monstropolis, and Corona, are really repetitive because the environments are so one-note, and others like Port Royale will be really divisive depending on whether you like the gimmick or not. But they're mostly fine in raw design. What hurts them is the fact that they're all so long and the combat cannot sustain them well enough. Each world is expecting between 2 and 4 hours from you if you're exploring and genuinely engaging with it. 2 to 4 hours is too much to be in one place, when all it really amounts to is a grind of cutscenes, forced battles, and bits where you're free to explore, on repeat, with combat that gets tedious after a while. People complained that Kingdom Hearts 2 forced you to revisit nearly every world for the second half of the game, and it wasn't handled super well in a lot of ways. But here, I think that could have greatly benefited Kingdom Hearts 3. Not only would it mean that the story could have been paced better, because you could have done all of the Disney stuff on the first visit, and then paced out a lot of the stuff that was crammed at the end of the game across the revisit, but it also would have meant that the worlds wouldn't have felt so long-winded. Each world is really large now, large enough to accommodate 2 visits with very little backtracking. Imagine going to Arendelle the first time, exploring your way up the mountain initially, but this time without the labyrinth, and having the boss be Marshmallow, complete with one of the jokes where they fall all the way down the mountain and exclaim how it's good that snow is soft. Now imagine going back for your revisit later, exploring the labyrinth and the alternate second way up the mountain, but this time you've gained Marshmallow's trust, so he's on your party. This then culminates in the same ending you had before, with the same boss fight with Grand Doggo. We're just shuffling stuff around and separating it all a bit, but doesn't that sound so much smoother and more appealing? The game could have made this work great without reworking and redoing massive bits of the level design or anything like that. And I don't think it would have been as repetitive as some people find Kingdom Hearts 2's revisits, so it's a shame that every world is just crammed into a single visit. All that I really have left to talk about here is how the side content holds up. Gummy stuff is pretty alright. Being someone who really enjoyed Kingdom Hearts 2 Gummy, I was excited by the fact that this was opened up. Unfortunately, I still think Kingdom Hearts 2 Gummy is stronger, since it's a more polished experience overall. Kingdom Hearts 3 Gummy has a few control issues, some balance problems, and a lot of ideas that don't really go anywhere. Firstly, if you reverse your vertical flight controls for the free flight mode, so that they're the same as flying a plane, it reverses them for the auto-scrolling battles too, which is just so unnecessary. The other control problem is that despite taking place in wide open space, you don't have full 360-degree 6-axis control. You have a defined maximum upper and lower value for ascending and descending. No loops here, buddy, but more importantly, it causes a lot of finicky roundabout flying when trying to go way higher or way lower than you are right now, especially when you're trying to fly around really large objects like the ship or whatever that's in the last area. Balance-wise, Gummy is pretty easy, but what really breaks it is how easy it is to get overpowered ships. It's really simple to accidentally stumble upon ships that are far beyond what you can currently create yourself in terms of cost. This means that you're usually at a disadvantage if you use the core of the Gummy experience and make your own ship. Other than that, there's just a lot of nothingness going on. Battles are super easy to avoid, and I beat every required battle in the initial Highwind ship without a problem in Proud mode. Good for speedrunners, but not terribly engaging otherwise. You've got constellations to find that unlock ships, but there are only a handful. Same with the treasure spheres. It honestly reminds me of Final Fantasy XV in that way, where there are a lot of mechanical ideas present, and all of them are very simple or shallow because there's just not enough content to fill them out. Still, overall, Gummy is a fine distraction. The same surprisingly goes for most of the minigames. I was dreading the amount of time they were spending on minigames in the advertisements, but most of them are actually competently made for once. Not super deep, but competent. The best are probably the classic Kingdom LCD games, because they have such simple rules that they're difficult to screw up. It's not perfect, mind you. Some of the flan princesses are made trivial by just waiting until the end of the game. Others aren't that mechanically consistent, or just have strange bugs present. There were many times in the photography one where I would take pictures at the right time, at the right angle, and it just wouldn't give me points. The Frozen Slide game is a little stiff, but it's fine until you have to go for the treasures hidden within. The treasures themselves are fine too, but the slide is so vast and there's no map whatsoever that it took me literal hours to find all of the treasures. Needlessly cryptic for such a simple game that you have to repeat minimum 5 or 6 times. Try doing it over 100. Meanwhile, the salt and pepper cooking minigame feels really strict. If you just barely hit it too late, you lose, but if you don't get it as close as possible to perfect on some of these later dishes, you can't get the excellent rating. The Pooh fruit collecting minigame also struggles compared to the flower and vegetable variants. It's fine as a concept, though not amazing, but it doesn't really provide much in terms of strategy, and since you can't ready your shooting angle until time starts ticking down again, the controls aren't really as precise as they should be. Meanwhile, a lot of the busy work collectible side content feels really unrewarding. Not bad, but unrewarding. Like, take the Moogle Shop photo challenges, for example. The rewards you get along the way are just blueprints to stuff that's probably inferior to the things you already have by the time you get the challenge and finish it. And that's not even including the fact that, again, they're blueprints, so you have to make your reward through synthesis first. Meanwhile, completing them all gets you nothing. It's similar with all of the lucky emblems. You get nothing for getting all emblems in a world, which just feels empty. And a lot of the emblems are just sort of hidden rather than creative. I genuinely enjoyed the ones that used the environment, but a lot of them were just Mickey logos slapped on something, which is rather uninspired. It doesn't help that a lot of this stuff is also required for getting the materials for the Ultimate Weapon, which is a great incarnation of the Ultimate Weapon, by the way. You have to get 80 of the 90 lucky emblems to get the required Orichalcum Plus from it. The Moogle Shop postcards are really deceptive. They treat it as if you can get a set number of postcards at certain increments of spending in the shop. Actually, it's completely random as far as I can tell when you get a postcard, whether you buy 1 potion or 10,000 monies worth of accessories and items in a single transaction. Meanwhile, the item you get when you mail the postcard is random, and one of them can be an Orichalcum Plus, which is just nonsense. It more or less forces you to grind for eternity until you get it, or save scum until it drops. I luckily got it in like 3 reloads or something like that. I was then there when my best friend did it, and it took about a half an hour of just postcards mailing over and over and over and over again. Kind of disappointing considering the game was actually much more fair with the rest of its grinding. Grinding for synth materials is pretty simple, and getting to level 99 can be done in an hour or less if you use the right spot, regardless of what level you start the grinding at. Though, the synth shop really needs a user experience upgrade. You have to completely exit the shop and enter your Gummy phone menu to see what things you've already created. This means to create everything, you have to write down all of the things you've already created, compare that to the list of total things in the shop, and then make a log of how many of each ingredient you need left from those remaining items. That's needlessly tedious, considering just adding a checkmark in the shop next to the things you've already created would have alleviated a lot of that problem. Heck, they did just that in the menu just below, where you can look at the Moogle photography challenges. Checkmark if you finished it. Finally, just a quick note about the music. Kingdom Hearts 3, as usual, has some fantastic music, whether it's the new stuff or the old stuff. A lot of it was combined together in ways that really speak to the story events if you're into that, but even if you aren't, they're really fun to hear. I don't want to show much of it here, since I've heard people have had some bad luck with copyright claims related to the music in this game, so I'll just share a quick bit of my favorite song from the game, which is a surprisingly simple one, all things considered.
Let's see. Let's see.
So what are my ultimate thoughts on Kingdom Hearts 3? Again, it's just okay. It has a multitude of issues that range from understandable to unacceptable. It's a pretty game with many fun moments, but it also feels ages behind in many of its design decisions. A lot of it doesn't feel like it was thought out to the degree that it should have been. I was really rough on it here, but that's because I think they could have and should have done better than this. Not only because Osaka Team has now been working on the series for basically a decade, but also because Kingdom Hearts 2 tramples all over this game in terms of actual design in most places, and that game is quite a bit over a decade old, almost a decade and a half. My biggest issue is just how many glaringly obvious problems there were, as well as how many places they tried to straight up rip concepts from previous games, but somehow made them worse. Even just the fact that there's no critical mode is astonishing considering we were first introduced to it in 2007. I don't think saving all of the super bosses, proper gameplay tweaks, and the truly, hopefully balanced difficulty for a final mix is okay in 2019. It was okay in 2007, it's not okay now. If we can complain that something like The Sims 4 excludes tons of previously added features, only to re-add them in more expensive DLCs, it's only fair that we hold Kingdom Hearts to the same standard. I can only hope most of this stuff comes as free updates. The problems with the combat and the world pacing run so deep that I don't think the game can ever truly exceed just being okay to good at best, but I think they can conceivably make it better than it is now. Here's to hoping. What do you guys think though? How many of you have played Kingdom Hearts 3? What difficulties did you play it on? What are your thoughts? Do you agree or disagree with me here and why? Sound off in the comments below and I'll see you next time.